Hello, good morning. Thanks for joining the Digital Transformation Council DTC Asia webinar. The title is on Industrial 5G Accelerating Digital Transformation. So this agenda runs like this, followed by the welcome. The presentation on the title will be done by Bob Gill, General Manager, Southeast Asia, ARC Advisory Group. This will be followed up by a Q&A where we will have two panelists. One, Mr. Sunil David, Regional Director, IoT India and Asian, AT&T Global Network Services India. The second panelist is Sachin Mathur, Head of Partnership Program, Smart Manufacturing, Hexagon. This will be followed up by the audience Q&A of 20 minutes. When we come to the audience Q&A, so either the audience delegates can put the questions in the chat window, or during the Q&A open to the discussions after the panel discussion, the people can raise a hand and they can straight away ask the question, and the moderator will unmute at that time to use the mic to speak. So as a part of the Digital Transformation Council, ARC enables the end users to connect, collaborate, learn and share with peers who are digitizing and transforming their organization. DTC is only meant for end user community. We do not generally allow suppliers to join the DTC meetings. And DTC members will have free access to the council library. They can interact with the ARC analysts. They can get priority access to ARC survey reports. And all the DTC members will get a free registration for 2020 Orlando Forum, 2021 Orlando Online Forum taking place in February 8th. And then DTC members can see the forum archives for about 3 months. I'm happy to invite Mr. Bob Gill to speak on the theme of the webinar, Industrial 5G Accelerating Digital Transformation. And Bob Gill, it's over to you now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Raman, for the introduction. And I would also like to welcome everybody to the first Digital Transformation Council event in Asia for 2021. Today we're going to be exploring the topic of industrial 5G cellular technology, and especially its role in accelerating digital transformation. So let's go back 2 years to the Mobile World Congress event in Barcelona. Now that is the leading trade show for the mobile communications industry. During his keynote speech, the chairman of KT Corporation, which is South Korea's largest telco, he talks about how the new 5G era would transform the world into a better place, and by elevating the user experience and create more businesses and enterprises. And it was just a few weeks later that on April the 3rd, that KT officially launched what was touted as the world's first nationwide commercial 5th generation wireless network in South Korea. And that was the promise to usher in a new era of super fast, ultra reliable connectivity for consumers, but also for industries.
Bob, can you enable your video?
I'll put my camera on later because I think I have a bandwidth problem. Once I finish the presentation, I'll put the camera on.
Okay.
So yeah, so if you were at Barcelona 2 years ago, out on the exhibition floor, one of the highlights was Samsung's new Galaxy S10 5G smartphone. And this was promoted by messages such as you can harness the power of 5G to download high definition TV shows. And what they said was in a blink of an eye. This is also the first time you would have seen the Galaxy Fold, which is of course Samsung's first foldable phone. But what was really interesting, I think, was not just all these shiny new sophisticated smartphones, but also for the first time, the chance to see 5G-based industrial applications. And in fact, the theme of MWC 19 was intelligent connectivity. And Industry 4.0 was one of the conference sub-themes. And in fact, there were several smart factory demonstrations out on the show floor. So, for example, in its smart factory showcase, which they called 5G AI machine vision, another Korean telecom called SK Telecom, they were demonstrating machine vision enabled robots being used to scan products on an assembly line that was set up with robots transmitting machine vision data over a 5G network over to a cloud application. And in there was software which made the pass-fail decision based on the integrity of the products, and then signaling appropriate actuation of the robot arms to put the products into designated conveyors. Another company, also from Korea, LG U+, they were demonstrating real-time remote control capability of 5G by connecting to an LG electronics factory back in Korea. So they're in Spain, so it's back in Korea, and manipulating the movement of autonomous mobile robots in the plant. And Orange, which is a French telco, they were partnering with Samsung and Cisco at this show, and they were showing off several 5G industrial applications. One was involved a drone. So they had a drone located outside of the Orange data center in France and carrying a high definition video system and a 5G router. And that was piloted remotely from Barcelona, from the Orange exhibition stand via a 5G tablet. And the attendees at the booth could also see a video stream of the drone in flight. So then we can fast forward just a few weeks later in 2019 to Germany and the world's biggest industrial technology trade show, which some of you or most of you will be familiar with, the Hannover Messe. So over in Hall 16, you could find what was called a 5G arena, which had a fully functioning 5G network. This was set up by Nokia and Qualcomm. To enable a number of industrial 5G showcases. So some of the companies that were participating in the 5G arena, they include the likes of Siemens, Volkswagen, Bosch, Festo, Phoenix Contact. And again, aside from the demos, there was a conference going on where they talked about the evolution, the dawn of 5G. So this is back in, this is 2 years ago in 2019. So you had MWC, then you had the Hannover show. And I think you can see quite clearly that there was something happening in terms of melding the two worlds. So the world of industry and the world of cellular communications. So today, this is our DTC event, Digital Transformation Council event. So how do we make this connection between 5G and digital transformation? Well, digital transformation strategies, they're essentially aimed at improving business performance in aspects such as reduced costs, increased revenue, improved business and process efficiencies. And there are several strategy enablers, such as using industrial IT to reduce asset downtime, using automation to improve product quality, and also using what are called autonomous systems like mobile robots to reduce the need for on-site personnel, often in hazardous environments. And it's these types of systems that do require extensive and high quality data connectivity. And this connection is increasingly to the cloud. And it's here that 5G technology can offer significant connectivity performance improvements and help deliver business performance enhancements that are enabled by this digital transformation. So this is a survey that was done by Capgemini around about the same time as those trade shows that I mentioned, a survey of 800 industrial companies. And a very high percentage, in fact 75% of these companies said that they believed that 5G was going to be a key enabler for their digital transformation initiatives over the next 5 years. And you can see that 5G was ahead of other contenders like robotics and AI and additive manufacturing. So clearly 5G is seen to be a priority and an area of importance for industrial companies. So you may recognize some of these phones. You may have used some of these phones yourself in the past. But since mobile phones first appeared in the 1980s, each successive generation of technology development has brought with it improvements in network speeds and performance, and allowed what was originally just a basic phone call in 1G to be enhanced by features such as text messaging in 2G, internet access in 3G, broadband internet in 4G, and now we have the beginnings of the first 5G phones that are becoming available. And what's often promoted is the ability to download a large movie file, say about 4 gigabytes, in just a few seconds, compared to what was previously several minutes or even hours with some of the older technology. So when we compare these cellular network generations, there are a couple of key network concepts to keep in mind, and which you'll often see referred to in the context of 5G. So the first of these is bandwidth. Now, bandwidth is defined as the amount of data that can be transferred per second across the network, and it's measured in megabits per second. So it's a bit like a 6-lane highway versus a 2-lane highway, and obviously a 6-lane highway can take much more traffic, many more vehicles than a 2-lane highway. The second important concept is that of latency, which is the delay time between data transmission and receipt on a network, and this is usually measured in milliseconds. So using the road analogy again, it's a bit like a car traveling on a road with lots of traffic lights, leading to delays, versus one traveling on a clear stretch of road. So when you hear people talk about fast networks, what they're essentially talking about are networks that provide both high bandwidth as well as low latency. So that's a combination of the amount of data and the minimum amount of data transmission delay. So here you can see the improvements in bandwidth and in latency through the successive generations of those cellular networks. And you'll note that 5G provides several times improvement in both bandwidth and latency compared to 4G, and of course compared to the earlier generations. So we're talking about a maximum bandwidth of 10 gigabits per second and a minimum latency of 1 millisecond. So as well as bandwidth and latency, 5G provides superior performance in a number of other aspects which are important for network performance. These include high reliability, low energy use, and also high density of connected devices. So it's not just bandwidth latency, but a number of other significant improvements in various aspects of 5G over the earlier generations. So that is why you're hearing all this talk now about industrial 5G, because it's those attributes of this network, along with the greater flexibility that you'll get from having a wireless infrastructure rather than a wired infrastructure, that makes this cellular network, this generation of cellular network, of such interest to the industrial world in a way that early generations where I would say were more of a tangential interest, but now there is very deep interest and enthusiasm in seeing, well, what can we do with this network? Now we have so much more capabilities. Now we have this very much enhanced performance. So the organization that's responsible for developing cellular communication standards is called 3GPP. And they've identified 3 primary use cases for 5G that will fuel both new applications and new business models. So enhanced mobile broadband, EMBB, that's very much about high throughput rates to support applications like very high definition video streaming or virtual reality. And that is mainly targeted at the consumer mobile phone segment. Ultra reliable and low latency, URLCC. This promises low latency with very high reliability, and this is targeted at mission critical applications that you'll find in sectors like smart factories, or increasingly in autonomous vehicles. So if you think of a driverless car that's on the road and it has to make a decision whether to turn right or turn left, obviously that communication to the cloud must be not only very reliable, but it must come with absolute minimum delay. And the third one is called MMTC, which is massive machine type communication. And that's for scenarios featuring many thousands of devices communicating out generally lower data rates and requiring a longer battery life. So some of the applications here would be things like logistics tracking, and many of the applications that you find in smart city technologies will make use of MMTC. Now, a growing area of investment in the area of industrial 5G is in what are called private networks, which, as the name implies, are networks which are not shared with other users in the way that we all share our own mobile phone communications with everybody else, and pay our carrier accordingly every month. But these are networks that are provided exclusively for a clearly defined user in a restricted geographical area, which could be something like a factory, or it could be, for example, a mining operation. So there are various deployment models for private networks, all the way from a network that is still hosted by the public network carrier, but has dedicated resources provided via network slicing to the user. So that's on one side, and then on the other side, to deliver a completely standalone isolated network which has dedicated spectrum. So I've listed some of the benefits of a private network here, and essentially these networks are likely to be favored by those users running very critical applications and or with higher cybersecurity concerns. So let's take a look at some of the current and ongoing industrial 5G projects. So this is in France, where Schneider Electric, they're working with Orange, the telco I mentioned earlier, which has implemented a 5G network in this factory. And this factory is one that Schneider uses as a flagship for digital transformation. So one of the use cases they're exploring is around the use of 5G connected tablets, which are running Schneider Electric's augmented reality AR application, which is called EcoStruxure Augmented Operator Advisor. So having this 5G capability, operators who are equipped with a tablet, they can very rapidly access information from the cloud about, for example, the maintenance status of a machine or future plans for that piece of equipment. This is here in the UK, over there in the UK, British Telecom, BT, as it's known now. They've installed a private 5G network at a site run by Bosch. And again, that's Bosch is using that site as a smart factory testbed in the UK. And they're talking about exploring ways of boosting productivity through robotics, IoT, analytics, also again augmented reality, and having these technologies running over that 5G network. Now let's move over to Japan. And in Japan, factory automation supplier Mitsubishi Electric, they installed a 5G network at the Nagoya works in 2020. And they're doing things like testing wireless transmission between 5G base stations and their own factory automation products. And the aim of this is to establish viable use cases for 5G, which they believe could be things like remote operations and maintenance support. And as they're going forward, they're looking to collaborate with both customers and with partner companies to create new businesses and new services which are enabled by 5G technology. So that's over in Japan. And then to show that 5G is also relevant for the process industries as well as the discrete factory side. So this is in Spain, where the Spanish telco Cellnex, they've signed an agreement just a couple of months ago to install 5G at a BASF chemical plant in a place called Tarragona. And BASF itself has identified 5G as a key technology for its digital transformation activities and initiatives. And they're also looking to, similar to the other companies, they're looking at 5G to enable IoT, to enable analytics and virtual and augmented reality. And they're talking, and to stress the importance and priority of putting on 5G, they're talking about things like we will make a leap forward using this technology, and this is really a pioneering venture in the chemicals industry. So these are just a flavour of some of the ongoing projects by industrial companies partnering with 5G telcos and cellular suppliers. Let me just mention before I finish that NLC is actively doing research in industrial 5G, looking at aspects like the market size, the suppliers, identifying some of the key strategies and trends, and especially what are the potential applications. But you won't be surprised that we do see this as very much as a growing market over this decade, with many new opportunities that are going to arise. So I've been through, looking at the basics of 5G, why it's relevant to digital transformation, why it's becoming important for industrial companies. And I think that now is a good time to bring in our guests who have been patiently waiting with us. So thank you for that. So we have today, as Raman mentioned earlier, we have guests from AT&T and from Hexagon. From AT&T, we have Sunil David, who is Regional Director, IoT, India and ASEAN at AT&T. And from Hexagon, we have Sachin Mathur, who's Head of Partnership Programs smart manufacturing at the company, and Cellular is based in India, and Sachin is based in Switzerland. So let me just put my camera on.
Thank you, Sunil. Thank you, Bob, for your presentation. And thank you, Sunil, and thank you, Sachin, to have in our webinar. I'll request both of you to start with a brief on your company and some initiatives, whatever you have taken for your company on 5G. I'll request first Sunil to start with a brief conversation.
Thank you so much. Good morning and good afternoon to all those who have joined us virtually. At the outset, I would like to thank ARC for inviting me to join this virtual panel discussion to debate on a very hot and contextual topic. So I'm the regional director of AT&T responsible for IoT. That was my very recent role. I'm actually going to be transitioning into a new role very soon. But as far as my current role is concerned, I'm responsible for the business for India and ASEAN. Work very closely with our sales teams to position our IoT capabilities to our enterprise customers. We're trying to build our partner ecosystem in the IoT space. IoT is an ecosystem play. Then, of course, work on a lot on our marketing initiatives. Because not many know that AT&T does IoT. So I use platforms like this to talk about what AT&T does in the IoT space. That's as far as my role is concerned. Coming to what AT&T is doing in the 5G space, and I'm sure all of you all know AT&T. We are one of the largest telecom service providers in the world, headquartered in the US. As far as 5G is concerned, that's a huge focus for AT&T. And we play both in the consumer side as well as the enterprise side when it comes to 5G. We have deployed a 5G network completely in the US. US is the only country where we own spectrum and infrastructure, and even Mexico as well. As far as US is concerned, we pretty much covered the whole of US from a 5G standpoint. We are very strong in consumer side, whether you're talking about enhanced mobile broadband, or you're talking about gaming applications. From a consumer standpoint, I think we have great set of solutions, and because we also bundle entertainment along with the connectivity, we have a very strong value proposition when it comes on the consumer side. As far as the enterprise side is concerned, we're going to see a lot more use cases evolve going forward, and I'll probably subsequently talk about what we are doing in the 5G space, mostly from an enterprise standpoint. And given that this is an event focused on industrial, I'll share with you a couple of use cases where we have actually implemented 5G for a couple of our industrial customers. Thank you once again for having me.
All right, thanks, Sanil. And Sachin, how about your role at Hexagon?
Hi, thanks again for the ARC group and Bob to invite me to this firstly. It's a pleasure to be here. So my role at Hexagon is within the manufacturing intelligence division in their smart manufacturing strategic initiative. I am responsible globally for heading our strategic partnerships. So I think, as Sunil said, it's an ecosystem play, IoT and industrial, this industrial evolution. Things like smart factory, smart manufacturing. All of this is possible through an ecosystem. So I'm responsible for our partnership program and strategic partnerships globally. I also am responsible for our internal innovation program, which makes all of these things real.
Okay, thank you. So I went through a number of aspects on 5G just now, and you'll often hear things like, well, 5G is a game-changing technology for industry. So to what extent do you believe this is a valid statement versus some hype by the telecoms and industry and the cellular suppliers? But truth versus hype. Sanil?
Right. So, Bob, I would say that to a certain extent it is a game-changing technology, purely because of the fact that the characteristics of 5G lend to that argument that it is game-changing. And I would also argue that to a certain extent 5G has also been overhyped a bit. than what it should be. Now, in terms of why it's game changing, purely because of the characteristics of 5G, right? So you talked about low latency less than anywhere between 1 to 10 milliseconds. You talked about very high speeds, 1 gigabit per second and higher. Very, very reliable, ultra high reliable network. 99.59 is the kind of reliability. And I like one slide of yours, Bob. You talked about 1G to 4G, and then you also mentioned 5G. So if you just look at from 1G to 4G, it was all about faster speeds. Now 5G is just not about faster speeds. 5G is all about a much better user experience, whether you're talking from an enterprise perspective or from a consumer standpoint. And we talk about user experience into the function of multiple components. One is speed, low latency, reliability, and of course security. Now, the other thing is that from a 5G standpoint, we're talking about use cases that we have never ever comprehended before, right? For example, in the use of healthcare, the first ever remote surgery was done 2 years back in China over a 5G network. A surgeon, who couldn't actually be at the operation theater, was able to guide the other surgeons in a hospital to work on someone who was suffering from Parkinson's disease. That actually happened over a 5G network, right? From a consumer standpoint, you can get that Stadia-like experience at at your home now, right? Thanks to 5G. And manufacturing, I think we're going to see a lot more use cases go on with manufacturing, whether you talk about remote operations, remote support using AR and VR, along with 5G and even edge. I think 5G in combination with edge, that is going to throw open a lot more use cases going forward, because there are a lot of applications where you need to respond faster to any kind of an event, and of course there is a need to send data to the cloud as well. And finally, I just wanted to share that the beauty of 5G, that you can actually integrate with other access technologies like narrowband IoT. You can integrate with Wi-Fi 6, and since you're talking about IoT, and one of the important pillars of 5G is massive machine type communications. You had that in one of your slides, and this whole connection density, 1 million devices over a 1 square kilometer radius. I think that is going to propel the growth of IoT going forward. So I would say, it is game changing in that sense, given that, a lot more use cases are going to evolve over a period of time.
Okay, thank you, Sachin.
Right. So something in terms of its game changing and hype, I think from a manufacturing industry standpoint, we've got to realize that mobility, just the word mobility, and it includes things like, of course, mobile apps, augmented reality, virtual reality, but also AMRs, automated guided vehicles. Now, mobility is becoming a reality on the shop floor in any factory, whether it's a small factory or a big factory like Amazon's and so on. And to be able to, in real time, communicate, data for these robots or for remote support to become reality, I think communication is super important. And that's why I think 5G is going to become a huge play, because 5G's hype isn't about, it's a great tech. For me, to be able to make use of it in a real manufacturing sense, it's about making sure that the communication is so quick and so fast in very simple terms that that things like use cases like digital twin or environmental monitoring, asset monitoring, this machine-to-machine communication between a robotic cell and a manufacturing cell, those things become so real that a person on a factory floor doesn't have to wait or take things from one room to the other, from a production room to a quality room and so on. And those communications happen in real time. Right, one other thing, one other thing, sorry, I just want to add one more point from a manufacturing sense. We have to realize that 80% of the factories in the world today, manufacturing today, is old factories. It's legacy equipment and legacy buildings and so on. So enabling communication technologies like 5G, wireless, or network bands, private bands, I think will be the game changer.
Okay. Thank you. So now both of your companies, AT&T and Hexagon, you're both users of 5G. You're both users of 5G. So I would really love to know how your respective companies plan to use 5G to enhance your own services and products to your customers. Sunil, so what are AT&T plans for 5G?
Yeah, sure, Bob. So since we are a service provider, we've been providing 5G solutions to our customers, consumer as well as enterprise. And in this context, I thought I'll share with you one particular use case which we deployed for Samsung, their semiconductor factory in Austin and in Texas. So they were running into a few challenges. For example, they had very limited mobility in the plant. And this is a plant which makes silicon wafers and integrated circuits. And here what we did is we deployed a private 5G network using unlicensed spectrum. And I think one of your slides talked about private 5G network. So we already have started to see many large factories deploy private 5G networks. And here we actually deployed this for Samsung in Austin. And the number of applications that we've actually tested here. So we're talking about health and environmental sensors, automated material handling, the robots which are there, mixed reality for employees, So you have AR, VR headsets coupled with 5G, that is helping, people repair very complex machinery. People who are on the field want digital instructions through a very high-speed network. So there again, we started to see those kind of use cases. Energy management, another big use case there within that factory. A lot of these machines are energy guzzlers. So how do you optimize energy? So that's another example, of use case that we've deployed. And the use cases are actually evolving, Bob. So while we initially tested a few of them, but over a period of time, I think this will evolve into even more, because Sachin talked about digital twin. At some point in time, we'll probably also have a digital twin of their, of their plant itself. And I think not just Samsung, but any manufacturing company, I think would have experienced, supply chain disruption last year, right? And you could even have a digital twin of a supply chain, of an entire system, and I think that is going to open up more opportunities, and especially manufacturing companies have realized that they got to digitize the supply chain, and thanks to 5G with high-speed networks, I think it'll go a long way in not just improving supply chain visibility, but also supply chain resilience. Bob.
All right, thank you. Sachin, yeah, I was quite fascinated to read about you have a factory in China where you've already deployed 5G technology. Can you tell us more about this and other things you're looking at with 5G technology?
Yeah, so I'll probably talk about a couple of use cases. One, us as a consumer of the 5G technology, and the other being providing solutions to our customers based on 5G technology. So we are actually building we've been building a brand new factory in China, because Hexagon produces its own sensor and hardware equipment and solutions for the manufacturing industry. And we've deployed 5G in the factory there, primarily for some of the use cases I already mentioned, which is autonomous mobile robots. So making sure that the AGVs on our factory floor, where the equipment is either being assembled or parts being delivered, is being communicated in real time, so that messages to the robots or changes in terms of the processes can be handled in real time. The second use case that we are evolving in that factory is of a digital twin, but we are actually not, digital twin is like, the fourth step. We're really starting from taking a baseline of our factory floor and from security purposes, so that when you are monitoring the factory floor in real time, you can compare the changes from the baseline to something's changed, on the factory floor, and then you can, from a security monitoring standpoint, take actions much quicker and much faster, so you're a little bit more efficient. Now, evolving that use case into things like more sort of augmented reality for communication and for things like repairs and support, moving that into asset condition monitoring in real time, all move towards the digital twin story. So digital twin as a concept has a lot of underlying factors in it. So that's what we are doing in our own factory in China. We are, of course, because we build these solutions for ourselves, we can actually replicate this with our customers also. So, for example, we are testing out in a smart factory lab in Sweden, in a partner ecosystem with Ericsson, who is our strategic partner today for 5G, which we kicked off. You mentioned Hannover Messe 2019, that's where we started. So we are actually testing some of these use cases with a customer in Sweden, along with Ericsson as well. Very similar use cases. And the third and the last thing I want to mention as use cases, we are infusing our own tech, our newly built tech, like I said, and we are doing innovation and R&D alongside Ericsson to and Hexagon R&D teams to put 5G inherently in the hardware. Right. So with these use cases, what we're trying to do is cover some of the legacy use cases of legacy factories and legacy machines, but also bring up the new innovative industrial machinery up to the standards of 5G.
Okay, that's really fascinating. Is there anything you can say, Sachin, about the kind of results you're getting from your China factory in terms of that use of 5G?
Yeah, look, the factory was actually supposed to be opened in October last year, so that's delayed for all the obvious reasons. But we haven't actually. We're starting to measure ROI. Let me put it that way, because ROI is the biggest thing. When anything new needs to have an ROI. So we are calculating that right now, and we are seeing some results in terms of kind of the efficiency of, I would say, maintenance, but those numbers are still to be calculated properly. So things like 30% less scrap in terms of material handling is something that we are seeing from an ROI perspective, right? So that's one thing I can tell you. Sort of decrease in terms of operator labor, in reduction of waste operator labor, let's say. We're seeing, anywhere between 25 to 40% growth or ROI there. So there's definitely benefits.
So it sounds like 5G is getting quite a lot of executive attention at Hexagon.
Yes, it definitely is, and we are doing a lot of investment in this area as well, ourselves and along with some of our customers and key strategic partners.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to the next question, Raj Kumar, do we have any questions from the audience right now?
Okay, thank you. As of now we have no questions from the audience, but
okay.
We can continue with your discussion. I request the audience, if they have really any question, they can raise their hand. We can enable their audio so that they can ask directly to you people. You can continue with your question.
All right.
Discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So no, I mean, AT&T, you're a global company. You're in, I know you're in Asia, you're in the US, and many other places around the world. Do you have a sense of the understanding of the 5G potential in different countries around the world, different regions, and also perhaps in different industries? Because obviously different countries are at different levels of 5G adoption. For example, in Singapore, they're quite advanced in rolling out 5G, but I know in other parts of Southeast Asia they're not at that level. So could you give us perhaps a sense of that understanding of where different countries are and perhaps also different industries?
Right. So Bob, since we have our own spectrum and infrastructure in the US, our focus right now is on the US, and we have started to see a lot of traction for 5G enterprise use cases. I talked about private 5G, but as and when use cases evolve, Bob, we'll see a lot more opportunities. What we are trying to do now is to build our partner ecosystem for 5G, because the whole ecosystem has to come together to take advantage of the use cases. So US definitely will continue to be our focus market when it comes to 5G. As far as markets outside of the US, we are started to see, and we don't own spectrum and infrastructure outside of the US. But what we do is we partner and have roaming arrangements with mobile operators, in Europe, Asia, and all that. So what we envisage is that maybe in a year or two, we'll probably start seeing 5G use cases for IoT. Right now, I think some of the use cases that we're seeing can be more than addressed through 3G and 4G. But once we start to see more use cases evolve, we'll stitch up our agreements with the operators who are offering 5G, and hopefully we'll see a lot more growth in terms of IoT going forward, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Sachin, do you have any thoughts on this global picture of 5G adoption?
Yeah, definitely. I think from a Hexagon standpoint, we are an organization that's present in a lot of the industrial sectors. So other than manufacturing, we have solutions in industries like mining, construction, as well as power plant and marine. And all of these industries have particular use cases, which from a use case standpoint are let's say 80% common. So things like maintenance cost, labor cost, decreasing downtime, in terms of efficiencies, providing AR, VR type of solutions. I think the use cases somewhat overlap, but where we are seeing a lot of interest from, let's say, our customer or partner ecosystem in these other industries is a lot around solutions that require real-time communication, of course. So, we're looking at, for example, in mining, where there's communication from machine to machine, from, let's say, a dozer or a shovel to a truck that's taking the material away. Real-time communication there from an operation standpoint, but also from a safety standpoint, is massive. The second one we see is in construction, where you go all the way from planning a construction to when the whatever is being constructed is done. You want to take a snapshot of that baseline. We see these fast forward movies from the start to the end. You want to take that baseline and then use that baseline from a real-time communication perspective during construction. So, for example, we have solutions where we build our own UAVs, unmanned vehicles, for planning the construction and monitoring the construction while it's happening. And again, real-time communication at that point is very useful. Where we see AR use cases being used a lot is in the power and process industries, in large oil and gas industries, and there. So augmented reality there especially for maintenance, for things like maintenance pipes or energy savings, like Sunil I think mentioned, is quite prevalent. So we're seeing some uptake there and interest there.
So Sachin, your role at Hexagon essentially revolves around, as I would guess, around partnerships. So presumably this area of 5G does require an ecosystem of companies, and you have to work with a cellular provider, perhaps also with a carrier. Can you explore that? Can you tell us a little about those kind of partnerships? Not having to go to specific names, but just how those things are structured.
Yeah, so we are, so for example, China is a good example, right? So it is a three-way partnership. It's a public partnership between Hexagon, Ericsson, and China Unicom, I believe, where the core base technology and kind of the infrastructure is being provided in partnership with both Ericsson and China Unicom, where we are being the consumers. The other example actually I have is in Singapore, where we are working with Singtel, which is again a joint partnership through our strategic partnership with Ericsson, who's our primary go-to person. So for Hexagon, we today are not directly going to telcos, because I think there's a little bit of a distance and a gap between industries and telcos. And this gap is being, bridged by companies like by Ericsson and probably Huawei, which are providing the base radio stations and those sorts of technologies to enable the 5G communication. So we are trialing some of that in a industry consortium. So partnerships with ARTC. So I'm not sure if you've heard of that, Bob.
Oh yeah.
ARTC is a big industry consortium funded in Singapore, where we are testing actually some of these use cases I mentioned alongside other companies who are part of that consortium.
Okay, that's very interesting. So no, did you? I mean, as Sachin mentioned just now, this gap between industries and telcos. Oh yes,
Bob. We have, sorry to interrupt. We have some few questions,
yeah,
and then we have only 5 minutes to go. Okay?
Please go ahead, Raj.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, we have a question from Mr. Amal Gaonkar. His question is private 5G versus public 5G. What is the cost difference for enterprises?
I can take that. So yeah. So the private 5G network will definitely be a little. I can't give numbers, but it will be a little more expensive compared to public 5G networks, because in the case of a private 5G network, you're going to have dedicated spectrum only for that enterprise, and all that equipment that they're going to use, the base stations, the antennas, all that stuff, all the equipment which goes into it is all owned by that company. You could even have the service provider offering it as a service, but because the fact that it's dedicated for one customer, obviously it's going to be more expensive, as opposed to public, where that kind of cost gets distributed across multiple customers. But yes, private 5G will definitely be more expensive than public 5G.
Rajkumar, did you say you have another question?
Yeah, we have one more question from Mr. Bimal Goel. His question is 5G certified for uses in petroleum or petrochemical installations?
For safety point of view.
For safety point of view.
So do we have anyone would like to chip in there? Is that something that your customers ask you to know?
I don't see there any challenge there, because even when you're talking about millimeter wavelength spectrum, anywhere from 28 gigahertz to 80 odd gigahertz, these high frequencies, while there's been a lot of concern raised about high frequencies that might have some health hazards, we haven't seen any proof of that yet, because even during last year, during the pandemic, there was some rumor that 5G might.
Exactly 1 minute.
So I don't see any hard evidence to prove that it can't be used for watt bands.
Yeah, and the fact that BASF is going quite heavy into this also, I think, is an indication of that as well.
Okay, so you're.
I'm sorry.
We have one more question.
Okay.
Question is, what is licensing policy in India for private 5G network in captive setups?
Okay, so India right now, the 5G spectrum hasn't been auctioned yet. March is when government is going to auction spectrum that is going to be mainly for 4G. Whether those frequency bands, I think that is 3,300 to 3,600 megahertz, whether that can be purposed for 5G is not yet decided. But 5G spectrum auctions are going to be sometime later this year. As far as private 5G using unlicensed spectrum, you can actually apply to the ministry, Department of Telecom, for that. We don't have any deployment right now in India for private 5G network using unlicensed spectrum. I'm not saying it's not possible, but there's a process wherein you apply for it, use that spectrum and deploy it for a particular use case. You have to go through a process for it, and you need to get the required frequency clearance for that.
So just chipping there, so when is 5G going to take off in India in terms of the licensing?
So Bob, there is an anticipation that maybe towards the end of the year they might have auctions for 5G in India. It can be next year also, but right now it looks like it's going to be end of the year before we'll have the auctions. And after that, once the auctions are done and then the spectrum is allocated, then obviously the providers would have to set up the networks and all that. So I think from an India standpoint, we're looking at sometime next year or maybe the year after next to see commercial rollout of 5G networks. But very unlikely this year, Bob.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have one last question from Mr. Bimal Goel. His question is, what is frequency ranges for private uses and private mobile networks? Private and public. Yeah.
Sachin, you want to take that? Or?
No, I think that the frequency is still a question in your field, Sunil.
Okay. So you have different bands, right? So you have the low band frequencies, which are less than 1 gig. You can deploy 5G using 1 gig, but of course your speeds are going to be much lower. Then you have the mid band, which is 3,300 to 3,600, and I think a lot of the auctions are going to be in that spectrum range. And then you have the millimeter wavelength spectrum, which is 28 to 80 odd gigahertz. There the speeds are going to be much higher, but then the propagation characteristics are not going to be very good there. The penetration of waves through walls and all that is going to be a challenge. So you got to deploy it in a very small area, right? So as far as India is concerned, I think looks like they might auction spectrum in the 3,300 to 3,600 gigahertz range, which perhaps be towards the end of this year. And even private 5G networks might possibly use 3,300 to 3,600 gigahertz range. That's my sense right now.
Okay, we have no questions now. Maybe we can end up our session.
Yeah, I think since we started a bit late, I think we can carry on for a few more minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Bob, you actually asked me a question about partnerships, right? So I just wanted to very quickly tell you that even for us, we believe in this whole, working with the ecosystem. So whether you're talking about working with the equipment vendors like Ericsson or a Nokia, we definitely want to work with them, but more importantly, to work with system integrators. So many of the large Indian system integrators, we work very closely with them, because while we might provide the connectivity, we need that services wrap around and to develop the use cases and all that. So we work very closely with some of our large system integrators. We also have a 5G innovation zone where we test out use cases. Some we do on our own, some we do with the partners. So and we believe that that's the way forward. I mean, I think we got to have the right set of partners, build use cases, and go and deploy that for customers. And one provider takes the responsibility to manage it end to end. Bob.
Okay, thank you. Rajkumar?
Yes, thank you everyone. So I have one announcement here. Next Digital Transformation Council, which Asia edition, will be tentatively on 25th of February 2021. Then in February, we are coming up with the ARC Advisory Group Virtual Industry Forum, Global Forum. Is accelerating digital transformation in a post-COVID world, and all the delegates can register, and they'll get a free registration for all DTC members. So thank you. So we'd like to thank to Mr. Sunil David from AT&T and Mr. Sachin Mathur from Hexagon for participating in this DTC Asia webinar on digital on industrial 5G. We'd also like to thank Mr. Bob Gill, General Manager, ARC Advisory Group, for his nice presentation. We also like to thank all the delegates for participating in this webinar. Finally, we thank ARC Advisory Group India team for all the logistics supports. I again request all the delegates to register for our ARC Global Forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.